We're now going to come to the other big version of modulation. Remember, the really big one that we talked about first was the common chord or pivot chord, and that's what we're thinking chordally. And that allows us to find a chord that's in two keys at once, and we're going to find out we can go to very distantly related keys that way, but not till next year. That's very cool. And we found that there are hybrids of it where we can look at chords, but we have a chromatic motion in there that would take us someplace, and then sometimes we don't care and we just jump. But sometimes we can use the counterpoint to modulate. And this isn't a modern technique, this is Bach. I mean, this is standard classical technique. It's what we call a sequence. And a sequence is one of the most powerful ways to modulate. Every composer uses it, and they left it out of the book, and I'm puzzled at that. I am puzzled by that, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. So I put up here the first two measures, except I wrote them faster, of Mary Had a Little Lamb. Mary had a little lamb. It's my favorite example piece, right? And if we look at this, let's look at it in terms of, let's do some definitions. Phrase. We've had the word before. A phrase is the music up to a cadence point. It may be not a period, but a comma, like a half cadence. It might be part of a larger phrase. So a larger phrase, if it has two phrases in a larger unit, it's called a period. There's triple things with three phrases, all kinds of stuff. But you come to a cadence, it's a phrase. But usually phrases are built out of blocks. And they have to have the smallest block that's got meaning. I mean, that's a small block, that's a note, but it has no meaning. There are only 12 of those. And so if that had real meaning, all the meaning would be in only 12 pieces. So a single note doesn't really have meaning, but when you start giving it a shape, that shape takes on a meaning, like a block that you would build a house with. And that's called a motive or a motif, depending what coast you're on. Motive is M-O-T-I-V-E, and motif is M-O-T-I-F. Means the same thing. So if we look at this whole thing could be seen as a motive or motif, or it could be the four notes, or it could be the five notes. Depends how the composer uses it. Oftentimes, these things are malleable. It's all art. It's not science. But let's assume that it's four notes or five notes, and that's the motive. Now, if I'm writing a piece, I might not do the whole theme. I mean, Mary had a little lamb, little lamb, little lamb. Mary had a little lamb, its fleece was white as snow. I could do that, but if I do that over and over again, the piece is boring. So I may just take that motive and play with it. And if I move it up or down by any interval, it's called a sequence. So let me just write a standard sequence of that, okay? So Mary had let's put the whole thing there. I'm gonna put the whole thing in as if the whole thing's a motive. Little lamb, and then I go up one step. Mary had a little lamb. And one more step. Can you see it here? It's on the board. Oh, close enough. Here, I'll move the camera a little bit so you can see it. And now I just do one more. That was an E, F, now G. Mary, little lamb. That's a sequence. And it gives us variety in our music. Now it moves all over. I could have gone up a third. I could have gone up a fourth. I could have gone down a step. I chose to just go up a step to keep it simple. It's what's called a sequence. This doesn't modulate. This is just the tune going up by step, right? Up the scale, right? And in fact, we know that this way. This is a major third here. This is a minor third. So this is what we call a tonal sequence. We kept the intervals, not the intervals, we kept the shape the same, but we had the intervals follow the tonality. We kept in the same key. But what if we instead said, oh no, every major third must be a major third? Oh, well that changes everything. So let's think about that. When we do this, we call it a real sequence. So we've got a major third. I'm going to make this a major third. I'm going to do it one. There's two ways to do it. I could lower the bottom, but it's easier if I raise the top. So now I've got F sharps. I'll keep the F sharp here. Now to make that a major third, I've got to sharp the G. And look at that. I've now changed keys. Look at the chromatic alteration. Now you're going to tell me that's distantly related key, but I'm going to tell you you're wrong. That clearly is some kind of C major chord, right? So it's a D major, it's an E major. But this E major chord is right after having a D natural. So it doesn't really function like an E major chord, like an E1 chord. It functions like a 5 chord, like a 5-7, right? So that E chord is a 5. So that either tells me I'm modulating to A major, which would be distantly related, but I could be modulating to A minor. This is just a 5 chord in A minor. Remember, that's just melodic minor. In which case, I just modulate from C to A minor, a closely related key. But I did it by using this sequence. So let's do a quick review. You have to play with sequences to know what they can do, but you'll play with them. You'll have fun. You take a motive. In this case, I made the big thing the motive. I could have got da da dee da 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 dee da 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 dee da. I could have done the whole thing with 4 notes or 5 notes or 7 notes, but I took 7. So I went up, and then I went up and kept the interval the same, so I had to have an accidental. I made it a real version. Otherwise, the sequence is fine. It just doesn't modulate. I did it again, make it a major third. And what I've got is I start with a C major chord, end up with an E major chord, with a D natural, set E as a dominant chord, and that E then takes me to A, and I've modulated either to A major or A minor. I could stay in E major here, or I could have gone to someplace else with it. I mean, but it naturally flows to A. So look at that. How easy is that? Bach does this all the time. All his inventions, his fugues, everything. When he wants to modulate, all he does is he runs a sequence. He doesn't even think of chords. It's all counterpoint. And if you do sequences, it will take you where you're going. I promise you it will. So sequences are very powerful modulating tools. The Baroque era, you see a lot of it. It turns out you see some in Beethoven too. But more and more, as we hit the classical era, we get more and more chordal. And we also get to more and more distantly related keys. And the world changes a little bit, but the structures are still the same. You got your basic modulations. We can either do a common tone or a sequence, or we can just jump to something, or we can use some kind of chromatic alteration. There are special cases of these that we're going to run into next year that have their own names and take you to special places. They have unique sounds. There's some composers like Schumann who uses certain of these quite a bit. But this is the foundation for all key changes. Now you're up and running. You're a modulating fool. Take care, my friend.